My name's Marilyn Levy. I was the Sisterhood president at Beth Jacob from 1990 to 1992. As I look back on my time as Sisterhood president, I am filled with gratitude, a bit of amazement, and yes, a few memories that still make me smile. One that always comes to mind is the Hanukkah dinner that I chaired. In those days, we did everything ourselves. We started cooking on Monday morning for a Tuesday night dinner, making trips to the barn to pick up the ingredients. No Sunday shopping back then, and working side by side in the Bet Jacob kitchen, just as we learned from the wonderful old timers, especially Dorothy Sherman. That year, Snowstorm had other plans. What began as a full team effort quickly became a group of three determined women when the roads turned slippery and the others couldn't return from lunch when they fed their kids. Together, we made soup, turkeys, and kept going until everything was done about 5 o'clock. My 15-minute ride home to Dundas took over 2 hours. I didn't have a cell phone in those days. I couldn't even call home and tell them where I was and what was happening. The storm didn't let up, and the dinner had to be postponed from Tuesday to Wednesday. Many people just stayed home because transportation was still difficult. Um, we learned one wonderful thing that weekend. We never again had a dinner where we hadn't had people prepay when they made their reservations. It was the only one we ever lost money on. The period, this period was also when we noticed a shift in our population. Um, People were working all day. They didn't have time to come to meetings. They didn't always have the strength to come to meetings in the evening. Barbara Lill and I went to the Women's League conference for conservative Judaism that fall in the Catskills at the Concord. There, we discovered we weren't alone. Sisterhoods across North America were having the same challenges. We came back with ideas, alternating afternoon and evening meetings, Sunday morning programs while children were in Hebrew school, and more inclusive activities for families. Not all of these changes were easy to introduce. There was a strong backlash from some of the ladies, but we did begin to try new approaches. Looking back, I think that willingness to adapt was one of our strengths. I also carry with me the personal connections from that convention. I remember meeting Shirley Waxman from DC, who grew up at our Beth Jacob, whose creativity inspired me to make and wear my first talit. I still use the skills that she taught me to this day. Moments like that remind me that sisterhood is not all about events. It's about relationships, learning, and sharing experiences that stay with us. Serving as president wasn't always easy, especially when the workforce was hindering women from attending. But it was deeply meaningful. I was fortunate to work alongside dedicated women and caring women who gave so much of themselves to our community. Gloria Silverman, Oliver Sholem, was the president after me.
For you being the president, you mentioned that there were challenges and you've mentioned some successes. What did you find were the most important qualities to have for a sisterhood president?
Patience. Um, have to stick to it until you get it done. Um, Learning that a job isn't all a job, that some people who just have never been a volunteer, let them do one part and somebody else do the next little part. Not all jobs can be divvied up like that, but we try. Um, we had always made money at our Hanukkah dinners, and that dinner where we actually lost a few dollars was quite a shock to us. Mind you, it never happened again because the simple solution was what everybody else was doing, collecting the money first. Um, and being able to get along with people and when we had resistance, being polite to those people who weren't being so polite to us.
And Rabbi Silverman and Gloria, all the shalom for both, were our congregational leaders spiritually. Tell us about the kind of activities that you had within the sisterhood, in addition to the fundraising events, other things that the sisterhood did that were meaningful.
We had different meetings with speakers. I tried to bring in some arts and crafts. We had Shirley Waxman, who was visiting her family from Washington, had a tallit making program one Sunday. Um, we worked all day, and every woman who attended, because there were no men who attended, they were not disinvited, but did not attend. We all walked away with a tallis if we chose to. We did some arts and crafts. I think we made mezuzahs one day. And we did have a Sunday morning program uh, occasionally with speakers, kind of like the breakfast club, but not regularly, not every, where we would bring in local speakers, uh, people from the Jewish community, people from the not Jewish community that have something of interest to us. That's what I remember, anyways.
And your family have a long history with Beth Jacob. How did it come about that you took on the responsibility of sisterhood president?
Well, I thought that's what people did. My mother was the president of Temple Sholem Sisterhood, and my father had been president of Temple Sholem. Um, it's exactly 60 years this time of year that I belonged to Beth Jacob. Uh, the first time I attended as a almost member was a couple of months before we got married, and it was a reception for Gloria and the rabbi because they had arrived. She was pregnant with Devorah, and as I recall, it was an evening cocktail type party where mix and mingle. And I joined the sisterhood because that's what I was brought up to do. Yeah, no, this was all so much part of my life growing up. Doesn't matter what sisterhood, same thing.
You, of course, have continued with your association with membership with Beth Jacob. If we were speaking to young people, families that might be thinking about joining a shul in Hamilton, and you were looking to tell them why come to Beth Jacob, what is it about Beth Jacob that you could offer them to encourage them to join us?
It's small, friendly, user friendly. If you've got an opinion, if you have an idea, people will listen. I was at a Shiva this week, and I was sitting and I was introduced to somebody, and she was talking about her children. It was a woman younger than me, but she has grown children, and they lived in Toronto, and the kids lived downtown. So they read in the CJN that SEDEC had free memberships for young families. So they joined to have a free membership for a year. And the synagogue was very friendly, and they're still there, even though she and her husband are, I can't remember, but they belong to one of the shuls further north. But we're friendly.
And that's something I think that our synagogue has now offered too for young families is a year of free membership. Uh, Now it's been really 30 years since we last had a sisterhood. From the list that we have, Susie Gurvitz, but Susie and Evelyn Silverell were the last sisterhood presidents. What would it take to get a sisterhood reestablished for Beth Jacob? How could we go about doing that?
I'm not sure they're feasible anymore.
Is there some of the ideas and programs from Sisterhood which we could potentially make available to the congregation? Because the experiences that you had with Sisterhood were so enriching, it'd be great to
We
find a
cannot,
way to
we,
incorporate that into synagogue programming.
we don't have to have a sisterhood.
What could we do to, let's characterize it as, find a good alternative or something which took those benefits and find a way to build it into synagogue programming now?
Provide programming uh, that is of interest to women. have it at times when when people are available. People have to be available. Women work the same hours as men these days. Each family works that out to cover the kids. I think that we just have to have more programming that's of interest to people and send out questionnaires, find out what they're interested in, give them a bunch of options, find out uh, how many reply, and what they're interested. Are they interested in the arts? There are things you can do with the arts. Um, One morning, a few years ago, when Rabbi Salzberg was here, he called me and I taught people how to tie their tzitziot. Uh, I think we had over 20 people, and everybody who wanted bought tzitziot. They brought their talesim, and we showed them how to check them to see if they needed them. And I think everybody did, but I can't remember for sure. And we had them and we sold them at the same price the synagogue paid for them at the Judaica store. And it was a good meeting. So it was something people were interested in. It's probably time to do that one again. Different people will want to check them because if they're not perfect, they're not kosher. Having artists who come teach people how to make a mezuzah, how to make Rosh Hashanah cards that will stand out that people will keep in their on their counter for years. Things like that. I'm an artist, so I think in the arts.